Welcome to the Beyond Body podcast with your hosts, Mia and Holly. Join us for a sometimes fortnightly podcast
where we explore all things mental health, being a messy human, and how to get the most out of this one precious life.
and all the ridiculous stories in between. All right, do you want to dive us in, Miss Turning 3-0?
Hello, sweet listeners. We are so glad that you're here. Good morning, Mill. I'm also so glad that you're here.
I'm so glad that you're here. And I don't have a working coffee machine, but I do have my aforementioned dirty instant coffee in iced form.
I've got my expensive $7.50 coffee. Also, haven't used my coffee machine since I bought it.
It's getting a great workout. So as per usual, little low light highlight, what's been happening in your part of the world?
Highlight. I mean, I actually was just a couple of minutes late coming onto our call because I was just glazing some hot cross buns. I've been in a real baking, like autumn baking era. I'm just perfecting my hot cross bun recipe. I've been making some coffee scrolls. Just a lot of kitchen time. A lot of time just watching dough rise. And it's just been like so peaceful. I've absolutely loved it. Low light, I'd say. I mean, honestly, I haven't really had much of a low light this last week. I did have a skateboard injury from falling off my skateboard. So I'd say that was probably my low light. Just hit an acorn way too fast. There's nothing quite like when you, particularly if anyone's like has ridden a skateboard before, when you're skateboarding on like a kind of busy street and you can just see that everyone in their car's like, ooh, as you fall down, you're like, I'm fine. So probably just that little knee graze, but I'm all good.
I'll buy you some knee pads and some elbow pads. Did you have those when you were a kid?
I did. My mum says to me all the time, she's like, you need to wear a helmet. You need to wear knee pads, elbow pads. I'm like, I'm 30.
Yeah.
But there is zero chance I'm going to.
I would rather die.
I would rather die. I remember going to the skate park with my goddaughter, who obviously is 4 and wearing her helmet. She was like, you need your helmet. I was like, I do, don't I? Whole left that at home.
Oopsie.
What about you, Mil? What's been happening?
Low light for me is a boring continuation of last week, which is just that I've been probably in the worst endo hole I've been in for a couple of years. Just no energy whatsoever. Dragged myself out for a political thing last week, and that's probably the most I was out of the house for like 3 or 4 days. So just rough, just really, really rough, but all par for the course. Really expediting that hysterectomy, I think, where that whole schedule of like maybe in the next has been like, okay, and by end of the year, we're doing this thing.
Okay. Oh gosh,
Yeah.
it's been around a long time this time, Mil.
Oh, yeah. But luckily it lifted over the weekend, which was really good because tomorrow I'm heading off to Bali for a couple of weeks, which is a bit of work stuff. I've got to go and finalize some stuff for us with things like some of the extras that we're doing with our wonderful group, like our little water temple tour and also the cooking class, and really want to go and see all of that stuff and make sure that it's up to the wonderful standards of Holly's usual cooking class, because obviously we're traditional there with the Balinese sort of cooking class that we're going to be doing. But yeah, so a few things to tie up over there with our retreat in August. And then going to this beautiful place called Tejakula because I have some writing to do. I've got some writing deadlines coming up, but I will also be having a good chunk of time off as well. So yeah, feels like it's real now, heading off tomorrow.
And you always say you just do so well when you're in Bali, like nervous
So
system
well.
as well. So I think as much as this endo flare has been a disaster, I'm glad it's happened now, not in a week's time from now.
Oh, terrible. Like I've been trapped over there because I can't get on a plane because I have a flare up. So the timing of this is good because it's like, okay, got that out of the way. Now I can go. But yeah, I do really well in the climate over there, especially with like my psoriasis, etc. It's just, and my joints feel good. Yeah, it's just harmonious. Love it.
Yeah, it's where you're meant to be.
Yeah. But today we wanted to do an episode unpacking the big advent of the 3-0 because Miss Holly here is entering the 30 club this year, a club I entered 7 years ago and I'm a big fan of, but Holly not so sure that she's a fan just yet as she passes through the gateway. So we're going to be unpacking some of the lessons on the way to 30 and a little bit beyond as well, obviously, from my perspective. But thought it'd be good because this is such a shared experience. I think that this is so indicative of how we, experience life so differently is that it depends on who you speak to. Some people are so stoked about 3O, and some experience a high level of anxiety about that change. What do you think it is that contributes to a little bit of is it resistance, anxiety? What do you think it is?
It's been really interesting because I think since I came back from my big trip last year, which was maybe November, I hadn't really put much thought into it. It was always sort of like, oh yeah, like I'll be turning 30. I'll think about it when it comes. And then I came back and I was like, okay, this is the time to this is the time to really think about it. I think what it is, it's been interesting since we sort of said we would do this episode. I've just had so much time to sort of reflect on why do I actually have reservations about this? Where is this actually coming from? And I think even though I have been someone who has taken a pretty, I'd say, unconventional path in life, right? I really not played it safe, I don't think, for a lot of it, and have had to focus on a lot of personal healing through my 20s as well. I do still think there was this attachment to timelines, expectations that was just subtly just hanging out in my psyche there, right? And was actually still really influencing this idea of feeling like I have to, be meeting these marks by this time, or this isn't where I thought I was supposed to be, right? Which I think is even, so many of the people we work with, whether they're in their 20s, 30s, 40s, whatever it might, teenagers even, right? It's always this feeling of like lost time or like I'm behind. And I don't necessarily feel those experiences, but it has a very similar feeling that just kind of hangs around. It feels scary, but again, it's also this element of unknown, right? I don't necessarily know what it's going to be like, and I think that also feels a bit scary.
Yeah, I think that it is not even time specific because, yes, these more obvious markers of, a number like 30 can bring that to the surface. But I think you can experience these feelings at any time, at any age. Like about 2 years ago, I went through this weird phase where nostalgia was just a killer. Like I had that sense of, this not lost period of my life, like I hadn't experienced it. It was that I had experienced it and it was over. Do you know what I mean? And it was all
Mm.
the phases of my life, like being a ridiculous teenager and being a like really carefree 20 something. Because the other thing I was doing is I was completely looking at those periods of my life through rose tinted glasses, leaving out like the massive eating disorder that I was also suffering from and
Yeah.
the just intrinsic pains of being a teenager. And so I think you do this. I think that through various phases of your life, you just go through these uncomfortable growth periods that appear differently or in a totally new way, where I was just under this heavy, sad nostalgia cloud for months at a time. And it just suddenly lifted. And I was suddenly went back to like, oh God, no, you couldn't pay me. Couldn't pay me to wake up and be 22. Couldn't pay me to wake up and be 17. Absolutely not.
It's interesting that I kind of have a similar but also opposing experience. I feel like I have this feeling sometimes of like I just want everything to slow down. Like I
Mm.
just want life to slow down. Like I have like this beautiful nostalgic like 5 years when I was living in Melbourne from like 18 to 24. Lived in so many share houses, had so many different restaurants and cafe jobs, and just at uni and just figuring it out. Again, mentally not stable, but a lot of the time was also having quite a good time. But
Yes.
even just that feeling of I want this to slow down. Even since I've sort of been back in the country, I've spent so much time with extended family and immediate family. And even knowing that I'm sort of moving on, about to move states again at the moment, it's that feeling of being like, I don't want this time to be over now. I so get that at the end of holidays and things. And it's almost like it almost takes me out of the present moment because I'm like already thinking about the present moment is going to be over. It's like it's not. Like be here, right? Like
Yes.
experience this now.
Well, it makes sense then why you work and have worked as hard as you have to bring practices into your life which anchor you and root you into what is happening in the here and now versus at the
Yeah.
sort of time traveling. Time traveling can be a really powerful tool and it can also be a killer.
Totally. It can be a very dangerous lens through which to witness your life if you are only time traveling forward or back, right?
Yes.
Um, so even in sort of this reflection, we both have kind of come up with just a bunch of lessons we've learned along the way.
Mhm.
And this is just a very small amount of them as well. I think the more that I've just been pondered and reflecting on this, I'm like, oh, that was a great lesson I learned of my 20s. This was a great lesson I learned of my 20s. So if anything, I feel like the journey to knowing yourself and learning never finishes, but these are just some potent lessons that were picked up in that 20 decade.
Yes. Do you want to kick us off with one of yours?
Sure. So one of my first ones is don't be a yes or no person, but an intentional decision person. You need context before you decide on how you would like to show up.
Beautiful. Yeah, I think that not living in that, like when people are like, I'm just going to say
Yes,
yes, or I'm
person.
just going to, and it's like, maybe
Really?
don't.
Yeah, and also also don't be a no person either. It's like have that level of like spontaneity, but also be intentional with your decisions.
Yes, like take care of,
Yeah.
please take care of yourself.
Yeah.
One of mine is you are a collection of all the past versions of yourself, and it is your job to take care of them. I
Oh,
think that this was such a big realization for me in my recovery and like all the things I've been through since was discovering that, those parts of me that showed up and were reactive and trying to protect
yeah.
myself and trying to prevent things that had happened to me before from happening again, which is so much of what an eating disorder is for people. It's trying to prevent trauma, which has happened before. It's trying to prevent criticism or rejection, which has happened before, or judgment, which has happened before. It does it in a way that doesn't actually meet those outcomes because you're swimming in judgment, criticism, and rejection in your own brain. But when I realized, oh my gosh, this like young version of myself tried to cobble together this really crappy protection mechanism to keep her safe, like God love her, was my way of being able to access self compassion. And then because I could access self compassion for this younger version of myself, I was like, but how do I show myself self compassion like right now? I can do it when I look back. How do I do it right now? And so when I realized, oh, she's still in there, like all those, that 20 something version of myself, 25, 18,
Yeah.
4, 7, like they're all still in there, and I have to take care of all of them because they're still showing up all the time. Like we're not meant to fix and cure our past experiences to the point where they don't show up as little red flags of like, I'm hurting or I'm disappointed or I'm sad. Um, and so it's like, how does the current version of me take care of that versus reject it or try to shut it down?
That's so beautiful. I resonate with that so much in sort of I guess that also connects in with like, okay, well, self-compassion also is such a big part of like self-respect. So to really respect yourself, it looks like respecting all parts, all versions of yourself, not just the chosen ones.
Totally. Beautifully put. What's another?
Um, this is a big one, which I think you're going to be like, amen. Boundaries are a way of keeping people close, not pushing them away. This sometimes means that you really need to put boundaries in with people you love dearly. This
Yeah.
one has got me through my 20s.
I bet.
Yeah, it's a hard one to learn. Putting in boundaries with someone you love is so hard because often, particularly if it's like family members say, there is this conditioning of, you want them to feel safe and accepted, and you want to feel accepted and loved. And it's a different type of relationship to friends or, co-workers, etc. So it can feel so hard, but ultimately that is the framework for a relationship of longevity.
Completely. That links in with one of mine, which is, the people who push back the most to you implementing boundaries are the people who benefit from you not having any.
Ah,
And that isn't even necessarily nefarious. That's not
yeah.
necessarily somebody with malicious intent who's like, and I can see she doesn't have boundaries, and so I'm going to use that.
Mm.
Some people do. That's probably something more diagnosable than than we're qualified to talk about. But people will just not know how to navigate, and they will utilize the fact that you are maybe a resource to them even if they're not intentionally doing it, because you are maybe somebody who is more generous with your time or your advice or whatever it is.
Mm.
But you can't be 100% of the input of a relationship. It is like relationships are all about compromise. If one person is always getting 100% out of the relationship, then there's a major boundary issue. Healthy people want you to have boundaries. Otherwise, it's that awful feeling of staggering around in the dark and not knowing where the edge of the platform is. That's a
Absolutely.
healthy person's reaction to you not having boundaries, but it doesn't mean that it won't feel like maybe you're being a bit taken advantage of or whatever it is. It's just, and I think it's a good measure when you do finally put your boundaries down. If somebody has a truly bad reaction to that and keeps pushing against those boundaries, might be it's time to reflect about that person's access to you.
Totally. And it says more about them than you as well.
Totally.
Um, this kind of connects to that as well, if sort of talking about relationships. People who avoid their own feelings are probably going to neglect yours, right? And I think this also comes into the idea of people can't change if they don't want to change. It's also not your responsibility to change someone, says the practitioners who that's literally it. But if someone isn't aware of their own emotional state, they're not going to be aware of yours and probably not going to be able to care for that with tenderness.
Completely. People can only meet you as far as they've met themselves. Not even that some people haven't done it because they don't want to or they can't be bothered. That just might be the extent of their emotional capacity or, their level of depth. Like that just might be it. I remember really good advice I got, I was probably like 18, 19, and I'm so glad I got it when I did, entering into sort of the very young phase of my adult life,
Mm.
which was, and I say this to clients often when we're talking about maybe a lack of capacity for someone to support them or give them help, particularly during their recovery, where I'll
Mm.
say to them, like, ask me for $1 million. And they're like, Mia, can I have $1 million? I say, no. And the reason I can't give it to you is because I don't have it to give. You would probably do something wonderful with that $1 million. You would probably do something fantastic with it. And it's not to say that you don't deserve it or you're not worth it. I do not have it to give to you. So stop asking people for things they don't have to give and then taking it as a measure of like, I'm not worthy. It's not about worth. It might just be about that person's capacity. And they may be giving you 100% and it feels like 10.
Absolutely. What you're saying there, I resonate with so much. I think, particularly in my 20s in romantic relationships, this was a huge lesson that I had to learn. I think I would always try to like squeeze out of someone like more emotional depth than they had to give. And I think, particularly, and this is just was a learning for me, like for anyone who relates to this, like if you're a big feeling person, having a relationship that doesn't have an emotional depth to it feels like death. I like can't breathe, right? Like I need to be able to have like deep, meaningful, intentional insightful conversations, but not everyone can offer you that, and that's also fine.
Yes, and I think that's another one of mine, which is more maybe in the dating sphere, which is don't fall in love with somebody's potential.
Oh,
All you're doing,
absolutely.
all you're doing is creating their potential in your own mind. Like
Yeah.
they may not have it. And so are we actually falling for somebody on face value with who they are and what they have to give? Or are we making up a whole fairy tale about what else might be there and then being woefully disappointed when it actually doesn't exist?
And then you have to deal with the big fall of like the massive letdown because you
Yeah.
were actually seeing the reality for what it was.
Yeah. And that you might have been part of what you were falling in love with. Do you know what I mean? Like sometimes we
Yeah.
ourselves
Yeah.
on people and we want to see ourselves reflected in them and be like, no, this person has my depth and they have my empathy or they have my whatever. And then they don't. And it's like, well, you really just were into yourself, which is a great thing. So maybe you just need you and it's not
Hmm.
trying to like lose yourself in, as I said, like somebody's imagined potential.
Totally, totally. That is such a good one. Everyone write that down. My next one, I love this. Not my monkeys, not my circus.
Love
It's
it.
okay if people do things differently to you. I learned this in the context of share housing. Even if you feel like your way might be more efficient, you don't have to intervene. Not my monkeys, not my circus. Hands off. Choose what's going to stress out your nervous system.
Yes, one of my friends is going through this right now and exploring it through therapy, where she's exploring the fact that she's so quick to be able to identify, no, you could do this better or you should do that better. And it comes from such a place of care and love and wanting to be a fixer. And I think that so many of us are conditioned to be able to identify problems. Like I'm a big problem solver. And just because I can doesn't mean I should.
I was telling my mum that we were doing this podcast, and I told her that one. She was like, "Hmm, I don't know about that one." I was like, "That's literally you, mum. Like, if my sister packs a dishwasher like a moron, let it be. Let it be. Hands off. It's not worth being stressed about it." What's your next one, Mill?
This has been a big one for me. People want to put you in a box because they need to justify being in their own. And because I have always considered myself to be a fairly unconventional person as far as like my life choices, and even the fact that I don't really care that my life choices are different, because that's the other thing is that we project onto women that not only should they not make life choices which aren't traditional, whether that's being child free by choice or someone who really enjoys most of the time being single. I like being with myself and doing things by myself. It's not my natural thing to gravitate towards relationships which necessitate like constantly being together. That absolutely is not my thing. But if you do make those choices, you're also meant to be really self conscious about them. And I'm not. And so if you don't make the traditional choices, people sort of like put pressure on you as far as why you haven't. And then if you dare to be confident in them, they then put pressure on you to feel bad about it. So you're like, oh no, I'm really confident in my choice. But don't you feel, and don't you, wouldn't you feel, and don't you think that you'll regret, and don't you think, and it's like, there's just these layers of shaming and yeah, expectations that we put on particularly women to perform their roles as women.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it, especially when you're talking about really big things like being child free by choice, you have very strong responses from women who are parents or who do want to be parents who can't conceive of the fact that you don't want to conceive. And you can kind of see that there's a resistance to it because it's opening a door to options and possibilities, which
Mm.
make them uncomfortable because maybe it's something they haven't considered before. And that's just one example. But yeah, I think that we often see that people want us wrapped up neatly in a box with a bow with all of these life things that you're meant to tick off because then they can stop worrying about you and they can also feel comfortable with their life choices.
Yeah.
And the fact is that once you've ticked those things off, your life will continue and you are never just in a box and all packaged up and everything's just meant to be fine and dandy now. You're still going to be a complex human being. But
Mhm.
yeah, I think that giving people the opportunity to look at all the options on the table and pick up what they want
Yeah.
so important.
That one just speaks to so many different things. I feel like it first of all speaks to just the lack of exposure to women living different lives is a huge part of it. But I also think it also speaks to what people think they're going to receive when they do hit those conventional markers.
Yes.
Is it a sense of meaning? Is it a sense of like safety? Is it a sense of like I've made it and it's a sense of
Completeness. I'm done. I'm cooked. I'm baked.
exactly, exactly. This really speaks to one of my other ones, which is your life is not going to be meaningful because you've hit conventional goals, right? Like you have to apply meaning to it every single day. You get to decide the potency of your life. That looks like, are you going to connect with the person when you're ordering a coffee in the morning? Are you reading literature that makes you think about the world? Are you checking in with your friends? Are you tending to your own emotional mental health, right? That these are things that are going to make your life meaningful, not waiting till you can go, oh, I've ticked those boxes. I'm like waiting for the meaning. It's like you actually get to choose to have meaning every single day, whether that's like you're staying at home and you're doing nothing or like you're on an amazing holiday. Both things have the potential for equal meaning.
Yes, and I think that we have sold so many people short with this idea of, and we talked about it all the time, like what does your life look like from the outside versus what does it feel to actually be inside of it?
Yeah.
And one of my biggest guides is that being in conventional box tickers or in boxes or doing this stuff which I'm traditionally supposed to do makes me feel like I am literally in a coffin being lowered into the ground. Like I feel claustrophobic. I want every stage of my life to be, what am I going to do next? Like even in the last year, I've moved and evolved into this space with the stuff that I'm doing online and with advocacy and, creativity that I wouldn't 5 years ago, you could have asked me and I would have had no idea, which is why I hate 5 year plans, because if you're blinkered and you're like looking just into this very specific direction, you're missing all the opportunity that sits outside of that. So I think that, yeah, even just expecting yourself to feel the way that you see other people. And that's not to say that there's anything wrong if you really do feel like you get a sense of purpose and that is how you want to live and you are somebody who does want to follow a more traditional timeline. That's fantastic, but that's the whole point, is that you've got to figure out what feels right for you and what timeline suits who you are as a person versus like just your gender or your age group or whatever, like person first.
Mm. I think I've learnt so much about myself through you, Mill, in terms of like that lesson. Like I feel like you've been a really obviously like mentor in like the workspace, but even just in like a personal space of like you really just own your life
Mhm.
and you don't look back, and it's such a beautiful quality in anyone.
Thank you, love. I mean, I do look back because this is my other one, which is like it is healthy to have regrets. I
Mhm.
don't look back as far as anywhere that I end up in life. I know that that's where I meant to end up, and that's also because I had a really great non-traditional example in my dad who like did whatever he wanted to do. Like he'd change his career, he'd move where he wanted to. He was very like independent and loved his own company and had a very like strong and rich interior life, which is what I have. But I of course look back and think that I could have been kinder or
Yeah.
smarter or taken care of myself better or whatever, because I think that's so healthy. I think it's such an unhealthy thing to say, live life with no regrets or I have no regrets. I think that is an indicator of like a real lack of humility and ability to be like a student of life and your own life, because we're not all trying to meet these perfect outcomes, but I'm personally trying to be better to myself and better to other people all the time. And there, of course, if you can't look back and say, I should have done better there, and if I'd known better, I would have done better. And now that I do, I will. I think it is very, very healthy to have
Mm.
regrets. If you don't have regrets, like how are you possibly evolving?
Yeah, like where are you going to be learning from?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. Is it your turn or my turn?
I have absolutely no idea.
I think it's your turn. I think it's your
Uh, okay, so this is a bit of a twofer, which is that the friendships that are supposed to last will deepen so much past 30. So much. Like if you thought you had deep, true, like sisterhood level connection with friends before 30, the way that it can evolve past 30 is just extraordinary. Like with, I would say, like my two biggest examples are Jose and Sarah, who I went to high school with. Especially Sarah, actually, because Josie and I obviously have known each other forever and we've been like, we've considered each other sisters forever, but even we have gone so much deeper. But with my friend Sarah, not that we had a surface relationship, but because we went to high school together and we had so many silly, funny memories and we had so many people in common, a lot of our conversations would just be about that stuff and a bit of like walking down memory lane. And now we really do open up to each other about the deeper things in life. And I feel like I've got to know this whole other person since I turned 30 and since we kind of have found this new level of connection. And it's not intentional, it just happens. It just goes to this deeper layer of vulnerability and sharing and in real time processing and like lifting the veil and really giving like your thought processes and like even with Josie, she and I have had so many parallel childhood experiences, even in how we've been parented, that we have only spoken about in probably the last 5 or 6 years.
Wow.
Again, like you can only meet people insofar as the level of your understanding of yourself. So as your relationship with yourself deepens and you understand your experiences more, those people who you have run parallel to, there'll be more crossover and you'll kind of share that with each other in this whole new beautiful way. The
Yeah.
flip side to that is that others will fall away and they will fall away painfully. And often, because as you enter your 30s, a whole lot of things start to happen for the first time. You experience really, really serious and deep losses. You go through really seriously adult shit. And you look around, and the people who you expected to be there are not only not there, they are neglectful to an extent. And that is really painful. It's a necessary attrition because it highlights the relationships which are so deep and so valuable and how extraordinary they are. That contrast is really powerful, but the falling away is very, very, very painful. But just like everything with enough time, you'll be grateful for the fact that it cleared some space and did what it was supposed to do.
I'm really feeling you saying that, like that experience. I think and maybe that just even like an avoidance of some of those experiences of like friendships falling away, going through significant loss is also part of that, like holding on to being like, I want time to slow down, I don't want to do this. I think it's because I am so aware there is so much more adult shit that I haven't experienced yet in my life that is to come. But I guess what I can kind of feel that I'm trying to do there is like control. It's like you can't stop time, you can't slow time. So
Yeah.
it's rather the only other option is to like lean into it and trust that this is necessary and it's going to happen to everyone, and that you're also from doing the work on yourself in your 20s, you actually are going to get through whatever comes.
Yeah, and I mean,
Mm.
the other thing is that like you can't rush it because
Yeah.
things that I've been through where I've been like, I just want the lesson, I just want the meaning of it, and I just want to, and it's like you have to give yourself the grace to be like, this is just a terribly shitty period, and I have to mourn the loss of this friendship, or I have to be angry for myself in this way, or I have to grieve the death of this person, and I cannot avoid it. Like you have to be here in this pain now because you are just basically putting it on lay-by, right? And you have to give yourself the chance to show that you can get through it because it's going to benefit you time and time again when you go, I can't possibly face this. And it's like, well, you got through that, sweetheart.
You have to. Yeah, that's it. I think it's like so much of your 20s is about facing yourself. And I think a lot of people also spend, part of it, a lot of it sort of between those two ways of like avoiding themselves, busying themselves, and then like facing themselves, having to, I was going to say sing the music. Wait, what is it? Face the music.
Yes.
And you can sing the
You
music.
sing it and face it at the same time.
That you want, right? And I think that has so much been my experience of being like, it feels really expansive and I'm pushing myself to do things and like facing fear, but like the real fear is facing yourself,
Yeah.
right? It's like that's actually one of the most important things about your 20s. My next one is that small things matter. Things like calling the friend you haven't seen in a while, calling your grandma, giving blood, like giving people your time. These things are more important than the deadline. Like calling your nan at 11 a.m. on a Wednesday is more important than that work checklist.
Yes, the people first,
Yeah.
because when the career is over or this is over or that's over, like who's going to be around? What did you nurture and invest in completely?
Yeah. And it also is just like always be putting your priorities in check. Like have a regular recalibration of like, where are my priorities at? How am I acting?
Yes. Yeah. And like how much time is passing before I am like checking in on that person or seeing that person or,
Yeah.
doing the thing that I enjoy doing? How long has it been truly versus like
I
just
do.
time flying and not paying attention?
I think it's so easy for everyone to be like, oh, I've got to do that thing. I've been saying I'm going to do that for ages. Like, do the thing, do
Yes.
the important thing.
Yes. Another one of mine, which is a bit more direct, but it's been a mantra of mine since I was in my 20s and feels more and more true as something to rely on, which is do no harm, but take no shit.
Okay. I love this.
Which is that you can advocate for yourself and you can have incredibly firm boundaries and you can be a confident person who backs themselves and knows who they are and isn't afraid to speak up
Yeah.
and share and lead or do whatever, but not through the lens of arrogance or hubris or being harmful, right? Like always
Yeah.
centering empathy and knowing that you are not the center of all experiences and trying to look for other people's experiences and the gap between yours and theirs and filling in your knowledge, but that you are allowed to, yeah, back yourself and advocate for yourself and praise yourself and be proud of yourself.
Mm.
Like being proud of yourself in a loud way as a woman, I think is so conditioned out of us and shamed to
Mm.
be someone who says, yeah, I do consider myself like a smart, kind, funny, good person who has something of value to say. And I don't need to couch that in modesty and excuses and deflection and make sure that everybody else is affirming that before I say it. So, yeah, knowing that you can back yourself and not take crap
Mm.
from people if it feels like it's unwarranted
Yeah.
without, without becoming someone you don't want to be.
Totally. That one is so fierce. I love that one. This next one's a bit of a lighter one. It's very much Holly Sunday affirmation for life. You can never be overprepared or overdressed. I think the whole idea of like overdressed, it's just an insecure attack on yourself or someone else that is stemming from this idea that there's this like unspoken expectation on how people are supposed to look and dress. Like if you
Yes.
want to wear something, great, own it.
Yes. That leads into one of mine, which is a bit of a cliche, but it is so freaking true, which is no one gives a shit. No one
Yeah.
cares
Yes.
nearly close to as much as you think they do.
Yeah.
And there's an important distinction that I often am reminding clients of, which is there's a difference between noticing and judging when people will say, but someone will notice that I'm different in this way, or they'll notice that I behave differently or I look differently or whatever it might be. And it's like noticing doesn't automatically equate to judging. People are going to
Mm.
notice. That doesn't necessarily mean that you are being judged or rejected or ridiculed. Where I think that
Mm.
we just allow our brains to make this automatic step to like that equals judgment and
Yeah.
reading into looks people give us or tone that they use or things that they say. Like, let's say that you got a haircut and showed up in a call, and I went, oh, you got your haircut. If you were in a place where you were perceiving everyone was judging you, you would be like, God, that was judgmental, right? Where
Yeah.
the only thing about that statement is, oh, something is different. I noticed that you got a haircut.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Totally. I
Whereas
think
if you're in a
yeah.
positive mindset and you hear that, you'd be like, yeah, she thinks my
Yeah, I
haircut
do.
is fucking
Love
amazing.
that. Um, I also think that then leads to this whole idea of like, don't take shit personally and don't make assumptions.
Yeah.
That is across the board, but don't make assumptions that someone doesn't like you. Don't make assumptions that someone thinks about something. Also, don't make assumptions that people that you love know that,
Yes.
right? So I think in so many different ways that applies.
I also like this one. I think that it can flex up a bit though, which is only take criticism from people you take advice from. And that isn't to say that you shouldn't be open to constructive criticism from people outside of like maybe your close advisory circle. But I think in terms of that really strong sense of like
Mm,
constructive criticism, really diluting that back to, well, who are the people who I have demonstrated that I can trust sort of their
yeah.
guidance? Where
Yeah.
for me, for instance, saying that as somebody who has a platform, I talk
Mm,
about sensitive things. Of course, I take on general feedback, but I always check it against the feedback of the people who know and
mm,
love me and who I really trust the instinct of. Because if somebody says something to me about who I am as a person, I'm like, well, that doesn't match up with what my loved ones tell me. And trust me, like I have loved ones who will give it to me straight. Like they are not blowing smoke up my ass. They are telling me, well, I think you could have, or no, I wouldn't have done it like that. So I have a really healthy support system in that I get the best of all of it. Like when it's good, it's good. And when it's really honest, constructive feedback, it is really, really honest and constructive. So being able to check that general feedback against that is really important, but not just taking, if you are trying to take the measure of who you are as a person and what your value is and what you should be doing based on this cacophony of feedback from people, you are going to be living your life up and down, up and down, up and down,
Mm.
right? Because it's so unhealthy to purely rely on that outside affirmation
Mm.
because it's so unpredictable. And also, while you're chasing after the people who don't affirm you, you're missing out on the people who would, and vice versa.
Mm.
And so
Mhm.
the rule there is something else that I tell myself all the time, which is that if the game seems like it's rigged, stop playing. So the fact that we're all taught to seek out this external validation of other people is a game you can never win. You can never get a sense of security in it. You can never get a sense of self from
Yep.
it. And so you'll just be chasing it forever, AKA like the whole point of capitalism.
Yeah, wow, Mel, that one's incredibly powerful. I have a couple that no, I feel like not everyone's going to agree with, but also
Right.
these are my lessons. So, don't be a hero by pushing past your body's limits. I mean, I feel like I talk to people all the time who just push themselves to the absolute limit, and
Yes.
just you don't need to lose yourself in the process. That looks like sleep, take breaks, nourish your body. Hustling 24/7 isn't a flex, nor is burnout, right? So in your 20s, learn how to care for yourself.
Beautiful. Love it. Yeah, start because it's like, when we think about just the practicality of being a person on the planet, you're in this body for the first time. You're like literally as you're building your relationship with other people, you're also building this relationship to yourself through like your physicality and your emotional world and experiences and your internal world. So true. Like as you grow older, you're literally getting used to like this flesh suit and what it's trying to tell you.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
also think it's like it's so easy as well. I don't know, just for a lot of people to get particularly young people in their early 20s get this messaging of like you have to absolutely destroy yourself at work. Like, like suit culture.
Hustle culture.
Like it's so toxic because if you haven't learned how to care for yourself first, that's not going to be a priority until it has to be.
And also with the structure of our world, it's literally not going to get you anywhere they tell you it's going to.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that are rigged.
Yeah. Another one, you can't heal anybody else and nobody can heal you. Like stop waiting for the white knight on the horse because it's you.
It is huge. Self-responsibility. It's
Yes.
a huge one, which I think leads into my next one, which is a bit of a big one as well. And obviously mean all of these with so much love. This next one for me is that trauma, genetics, life experience, and conditioning are significant players in your developing belief systems, patterns, and of course your behaviors. But there is still a choice about how you move through the world, right?
Yes.
And I think when I say victimhood, I mean mental victimhood, not actual experience victimhood. I would say the idea of sort of like this, I would say like eternal victimhood, very
Yes.
dangerous way to view your life, right? Do not make your struggles your identity. You are more than your illness, your trauma, your circumstances. The choice is how you let these experiences shape your future. Some of the most remarkable people I have ever met in my life and people that I look up to are people who have had really hard starts to life and have gone through really hard experiences, but they have taken that trauma or, even genetics experience, whatever it is, and they have not let themselves drown in it. They have used that to make them stronger, and there is always a choice.
Yes. Another one for me, everything does not happen for a reason. Some things are just shit and terrible, and people do evil, horrible things. And as much as we can, like, as it's not what I mean by that is that yes, you can do something with it, but it's not this predestined thing that was supposed to happen
Yeah.
to you. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean? I think that
totally.
the opposite of what you're saying, but to like this extreme sense of
Yeah.
like it was this predestined thing, you were meant to go through it and you're going to, and it's like absolutely not. You do have hopefully access to things which allow you to make choices which maybe can contextualize that differently or move through the world in a way that puts you back in the driver's seat. But there are some things that are so outside of your control, and it's not because you were put on this path or because it was predestined for you. I hate seeing that rhetoric on like social media, etc., where it just has this, yeah, almost like prophetic, um, pre-planned thing of this was meant for you. And I think that people can internalize a lot of shame around that kind of messaging.
This is a little bonus one that realizing that like it's really easy to lean to comfort instead of doing the thing that makes you scared, right? Because it is easier to sit in that place of, well, this is what's happened to me, and like this is just, this is what my life is going to be like. Like it is really easy to sit in comfort, or even in the sense of like, I'm too like everyone gets in their own way. I think everyone just gets in their own way in a lot of ways and can like play it safe, right? And not go after that job or that relationship or move city or whatever, or after the dream. But take on the mentality of like, why can't that be you, right? That everything actually works out for as well.
Yes. One of mine, big one in my life is trying to make difficult people love you is self-abandonment. Where we have this, maybe this conditioning of
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
you can like win at somebody's like affection or care for you. And if you can just get them to love you or to connect with you in this way, then that's a measure of who you are as a person versus,
Yeah, wow.
again, sort of like meeting people at the limits of where they are versus trying to get them to fill something they don't have the capacity to
Mm,
fill. Um, and truly that like self-abandonment, whether it's through the form of an eating disorder or something else maladaptive, or in the ways that you interact with other people. It's the
mhm.
thing I think from my 20s that I learned the most was like the coming home to self and not abandoning myself again.
I think if I was actually to choose one lesson from my 20s, it would be something on the lines of that of learning to stay with your emotions, make friends with them.
Yeah.
It's just so powerful. I really love this one, and I feel like it's really important to me, this next one, that my body is a product of a life that I love. And
Mm.
that is such a beautiful thing. It is a physical representation that I am happy, kind to myself. I exercise, but I also eat ice cream, and I take naps, but I work hard. My body's not restricted, and that means that my life is also not restricted. And my body is my everyday reminder of that.
Yes. Another one for me, big lesson, particularly going through loss and sort of giving of yourself to others. Self-sacrifice and martyrdom are not the same as generosity. Um, and if you don't have limits, then nobody else, like we talked about with boundaries, like nobody else can meet them. But especially in big things, whether or not you're a carer for somebody else or you're trying to keep somebody afloat, etc. If you are not checking in with what your actual limits are and what your capacity is, you don't then have entitlement to, and this is probably one that people won't like either from my end. You don't then have the right to martyrdom, right? Like
Yeah.
you can't feel yourself literally breaking emotionally, physically, internally and ignore those signs and then claim that nobody else did either. Do you know what I mean? Like if
Mm,
you're not your
totally.
first advocate, expecting anybody else to and for them to intervene. And look, this obviously has caveats as far as like mental illness, etc. We don't have that awareness and we don't have that capacity. But this is more of a self-criticism that's turned into a piece of wisdom, which is that there are many intervals in my life where I have extended myself far past what my capacity actually was because I was mistaking it for generosity and
Yeah.
being a giving person who was doing quote unquote the right thing and was harming myself in the process and ending up everyone else was fine and I was just in a heap, barely putting myself back together and feeling very entitled to pointing the finger at everybody else when I had never really like shown up for or advocated for myself.
Totally. And some of these lessons, right, they're really hard to learn, and they are learned through really difficult experiences.
Looking at yourself is painful. Looking at all the way, I think that some of your 20s you can really spend, and this is very healthy because I think that going from that young adulthood into some of those older, like mid to late 20s years, is when you're really starting to make sense of your childhood and your upbringing and maybe some of the ways that
Mhm.
you've been treated. So it's a very natural time to process how other people have behaved and how other people have treated you and how other people have been flawed and impacted you. And then as I think you head towards 30 and beyond is more of that self-reflection time of, okay, I've
Mhm.
given myself the chance to be honest about other people and their treatment of me. Now, what about me?
Hmm. Yeah, it's because it's also you have to have a bit of life experience under your belt as well to be able to do some of this processing as well.
Yes.
Probably
Yeah.
why 30s just seems like it's like such a big thing because it's like you've now got 30 years of this time on this earth to be able to figure some of this stuff out. You don't have that life experience when you're turning 20.
Yeah.
My next one is a very happy one. Learn new things that have nothing to do with conventional productivity and everything to do with curiosity and joy. I have said this before on the podcast, but I do think hobbies may save the world.
Mm-hmm. She does love a hob.
Loves a hob. Queen of hobs.
Queen of the hobs.
Every hobby, I've probably tried it. Mm.
um, I think I'm out.
Yeah, I mean, I could go forever, but I'm also, okay, I'll give you one more. I'll give you two more very easy ones.
Yes, please.
Get your sleep hygiene down. This looks like, for me personally, no phone after 8 p.m., low lighting, eye mask. Like, I sleep like a princess and it makes my life exceptionally better.
And water. Drink water for God's sake.
Hydrate, sleep, sunscreen, focus on your nervous system. If you take anything from this, take that.
Yes. Yes, please sunscreen with the messaging out there with some of the anti-sunscreen people. Sunscreen. I don't care what kind you use, low tox, whatever you want to call it, just put
Low tox, high
sunscreen
tox,
on.
whatever.
Please. The most tox you can get, slap it on.
But I think even from all of these, Mill, if I just reflect on them, I think something that is so congruent with them is that it's actually so okay and necessary to be lost and confused sometimes. To get these lessons, you got to go through the ringer.
Yeah. And I mean, let me, from the other side of it, like 7 years on the other side, and don't get me wrong, like as much as I have told you that, turning 30 and, the age 30 was phenomenal, I then went through the most awful time of my life from, how old
Yeah.
was I? 34? Yeah. No, 33 to like 35 were the two worst years of my life, hands down. But I felt like I could get through it in a way that I absolutely couldn't have if it had been a decade sooner. So it's not to say that like life is just perfect when you turn 30. Everybody's going to have their own experiences and their own set of circumstances as they're moving through that period of their life. But there is something so wonderful and like a settling feeling. And I think we've spoken about this before, like just a more anchored, rooted into yourself, more at home kind of feeling within yourself that comes with time and age, and that's not just specific to 30. I can't wait to turn 40. I think I'm quite lucky. I was surrounded particularly by women growing up who are like, love getting older, love it. Like, wait till you get to your 40s, wait till you get to that sense of self and knowing yourself and how you move through the world through that age. And same thing at 50, and watching my mum in her 60s who's got wonderful community and lives such a vibrant life, and has a good relationship with herself and the world and the people around her, like moves through the world confidently. Um, and her friends and, our family friends who I've been able to observe, maybe that's because that's my experience, but that's the other thing I would recommend is like broaden the people who you know in your life across all generations, across all experiences. And I think that a lot of that fear and anxiety will be quelled just from
Mm.
that, to seek out those diverse life choices, because that just shows you like as long as you're following your instinct and your gut, like you can't possibly get it wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel comforted even just from this conversation.
Love to hear it. And we hope that you did too. Let us know whether or not that's a milestone you're approaching, or you're in it, or you've passed it. As always, we love to hear your experiences, your thoughts. Leave them for us in the comments on Spotify, on YouTube. We will be back in a couple of weeks with another ep. Not sure what we'll do. Maybe we'll do another little Q&A. The people love it.
Yeah, the people love a Q&A.
Yeah, yeah. We'll put something, I'll pop something up on Instagram. And maybe doing that from Bali actually. So I might give you a little sneak peek of Bali life.
We'll see you then. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.